if you were going to be able to make it.
Um,
Okay, is YouTube live now? Yes. Okay, YouTube is live. Thank you for being with us tonight, everybody. There is, as we all know, there's spotty internet connections and power coming in and out around town. So if we lose connection, that's the reason why. But thank you so much to everybody who is here, to the members of the public watching on YouTube. Thank you so much. We are tonight's comprehensive plan steering committee meeting has a lightness to it. We are very excited to be in the last stretch of this project. We still have a ways to go, but we are nearing the finish line. It's just in sight. It's there. We can see it. So um, I want to invite everybody to save the date for the next public workshop that's going to be on January 29th at 7:30 at the Lewisboro Townhouse and simultaneously on Zoom and streamed to YouTube. We will be reviewing the draft comprehensive plan and the draft zoning code amendments, both of which we will be chatting about tonight. We'll be talking in more detail about next steps tonight and getting everybody on the same page. But roughly, we're going to talk about the draft of the comprehensive plan tonight. And then Valerie and her team at NPV are going to finalize the draft, send it to the town board along with the zoning code, the proposed changes to the zoning code. The town board is going to be reviewing them. Valerie and her team will be presenting to the town board on January 8th. And then we will have the public workshop on January 29th. And then after that, public hearings. And after that, the town board will vote to either adopt or not the comprehensive plan. So we're really excited about where we go from here. And before we start, I just two sets of thank yous. One, thank you, Valerie and your team, all the Star White House and the NPV people that are on the call today. Just all the work and attention to detail that you have been putting in behind the scenes. We really, really appreciate. So thank you so much. And to the members of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee and the chairs of the other boards and councils that have been participating along the way, and to our town board liaisons who aren't here tonight because their town board meeting was rescheduled. Thank you so much for all the work. We've had a big push coming up here where we've been reviewing the plan itself and the draft. Our zoning subcommittee has been reviewing the zoning code amendments that have been proposed by NPV. So lots and lots of work behind the scenes, and I just can't thank this group enough for all of the time, attention, and commitment to the process here. We've really done an amazing job of um, doing what we set out to do, which is engaging the entire community of Lewisboro, making sure the process is inclusive and wide-reaching as possible, and making sure that Valerie and her team get all that input directly and can translate it into an actionable plan for this town. So really, really proud of all the work that's gone in behind the scenes. So with that, I am going to kick off the meeting. Our first topic is for Valerie and her team, including Star White House, which is a subcontractor for NPV. They worked on the Appendix B of the draft plan, which is standards for accessibility and inclusiveness. So we're going to go over the comments and just, have a little discussion about any open questions. But I was really happy to hear from Valerie leading up to tonight's meeting that they received all the comments that were aggregated from this group and nothing jumped out as difficult to implement. Really, we just had a lot of stuff about clarity of language typos, formatting, how to make the document a little bit more accessible, beefing up the table of contents and hyperlinks throughout, and changing some of the photos to make them sharper and more engaging. So very high level stuff. The content is great, and we really don't need to do anything to change the content. So yeah, with that, I will pass it to Valerie. And I know you mentioned we can start with Appendix B. That way the Star White House people don't have to stay for the entire meeting.
Great. Thanks, Katie. First of all, I just want to do some introductions. I have Sam Giussiano, who's here from MPV. She's been very much involved in actually the whole entire Lewisboro comprehensive plan process. She's been at all the public workshops, and she's also been assisting with development of the comprehensive plan. And then I also have Michael Haggerty and Annabelle Finkel from Star White House, which have been instrumental in developing the accessibility guides. So I'm gonna kind of turn it over to Michael and Annabelle to talk a little bit about like their approach to the Appendix B, and then just if there's any questions on, the Appendix B, that I'm calling it Appendix B, but it's really like the accessibility best practices, and then kind of their next steps to kind of complete that particular appendix. So, Michael, why don't I turn it over to you, and you can just kind of give them a high level of like your approach to it, and then just kind of open it up for any comments from the committee.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so I think the goal here was to give you goals and references to carry forward with the comprehensive plan. And we were asked to look specifically at the parks and preserves and community facilities of the town. So overall, we did a high level assessment, windshield survey of each of those facilities, and looked to identify, what are the existing conditions there, and through the accessibility lens, what are some actions that can be taken. We also sought to outline for you references and case studies related to the expanded world of accessibility today. So that includes ADA, but that also includes other types of abilities and sensory experiences, as well as neurodiversity, which refers to people who are on the spectrum that experience space in another way, and how you can design public spaces and play spaces for all. So there's the site assessment, there's the references and the case studies, and then some short and long-term actions at the end there. And I think the appendix was conceptualized as a kind of supplement to the community facilities and open spaces elements of the plan. But I think it is now, as an appendix, something of an umbrella document that you can kind of think through all of your capital projects and what you're doing, and apply that lens of accessibility.
And I just want to add that Nicole from the Lewisboro Parks and Recreation Department did go through the draft and verified where she thought, yes, that's true, and oh wait, no, I think there is something there. So
yeah,
so we looked at it super closely, and I feel confident that we gave you all the feedback that you need to just tweak it a little bit so it's fully representative.
Yeah, we saw that markup, and we can make all of those changes. Yeah.
Cool. Does anybody have any questions for Star White House? Jan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm busily looking for how to raise my hand officially, but thank you for
Okay.
recognizing the wave. So I know this was specifically done for public areas, and for general activities. But is there anything that we should be thinking about bringing this into, I don't know, other aspects? I'm thinking about anything that goes from signage of, should we have, one of the things I've struggled with as we talk to people, should we be suggesting multilingual signage on things? Should we have different, and I know this really wasn't the focus, but if you have it, I mean, I know we've talked about it for open space and for public public areas. Is there any, have communities tried to extend that into site planning or other, I don't know, other activities? We were so, and some of this comes out as I was just thinking about Katie's introduction, talking about all the outreach kind of activities that were done to really bring people in. And there was so much attention in particular to multilingual access that I'm opening up at that as an idea.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we can add to the appendix, a section on that. You know, this is pretty high level, so you know, like signage guidelines or that sort of thing might be a next step, and then you know, the design of signage really comes when you do a project. And what we're doing here is really looking at the like national standards and case studies and those sorts of things. So this week before we submit the draft final, we can certainly look into that.
I'm sorry, I wasn't
include-
asking so much to change it because I know that was the real,
Yeah.
you were given one push. I'm just wondering, as we read this document and get this document, would you
Yeah.
advise us to kind of use it maybe beyond the area that it's specifically focused for?
Maybe Michael can add like just a little bit of like, you know, maybe a little paragraph at the end, kind of like next steps or further applications, right? You know, and it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be like very specific, but can just be like, okay, now, you know, this is like the first step, but further applications could include, and then maybe identify signage or so this is something then when you have other projects, you can maybe look at that and say, hey, look, in the comprehensive plan, it identifies these additional potential avenues to also take a look at in terms of when developing stuff for the public.
Yeah, and I think in that too, it's also again kind of this appendix as like a lens for thinking about projects, like at the scoping stage, for the town to kind of ask the question, you know, what are the dimensions of accessibility and inclusion in this project? And it's from the whole, you know, the whole continuum from, you know, what you have to do complying with legal standards to, you know, what does this mean in this community in terms of signage, wayfinding, play, like what does accessibility mean, and how are we setting goals when we're scoping projects to make sure that's happening?
Yes, yeah. So, and just to be, so we have some like private nature preserves that come in and so they're open, by definition, they're open to the public, but they're not town owned or really public facilities in any way. And, you know, that was one place where if it had a sentence or two, as Valerie suggested, that said, this can be considered for other locations, then we have an anchor we could tie back to the comp plan. Thank you.
And also the very first draft that Star White House provided us did have a number of those nature preserves identified, as well as the school district properties, but because they're technically not town owned, nor does the town have any authority over them, we removed them for that Appendix B because but there might be some elements of that Star White House has already looked at that they might be able to bring into that that other section that you're referring to.
Okay.
Charlene?
We may have some authority over some of the nature preserves in the planning or zoning process. So that's why I think Jen is concerned with it, and as am I.
Great. So adding in a little context there, I think would be super helpful. Does anybody else have any questions for Star White House? Okay, thank you so much. This goes for your team, and also for NPV. If you feel like you're missing any photos, you don't need to feel the need to hop in your car and drive over here. We have some true photographers that are part of this group, so we can snap a photo of anything you need and from whatever angle you want, and save you guys some time and effort there. that goes for everybody.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so
Well,
much for joining us.
yeah, it's good to see you all. I know that Star White House only sort of met you a few times in this process, but just want to say congratulations to you all on this milestone. You know, we recognize that these comprehensive plans are really a service to the community, and your time is, and so it's pretty exciting to see how far you've come in the last couple of years.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, Valerie, I'll turn it over to you. I don't think we have to go into any specific details, but
Yeah,
just
so
give an overview.
yeah, so Mike and Annabelle, if you're more than welcome to stick around, but other than that, have a good rest of the evening. So we went through all your comments, and Sam provided a little bit of a has a list of what I'm going to call the more substantive comments, a couple things that we just kind of want to talk with the group or get a better clarification on. So Sam, you want to pull up that document, and then we can just kind of touch upon them. They're not many, so we'll be able to run through them pretty quickly.
Yeah, do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Can everyone see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so one of the things that we had a question on was like one of the first comments that dealt with dealing with the town and the number of housing units. So we kind of mentioned that like the number of housing units have been pretty stagnant in terms of like overall development. But then the question said, but you're also raising additional, that additional 157 have been approved during the process, which is higher than the 50-year, basically the 50 per year for the decade of growth. And so the difficulty there is like you're dealing with census numbers, and then you're also dealing with on the ground what has been approved or developed, but some of it has just been approved and it's still in the pipeline. It hasn't been developed. So, basically you're not seeing a housing boom, right? You're just seeing like just an incremental growth. So what we can do is maybe try to we'll maybe change the language a little bit to kind of make a note that it's like incremental growth, right? So we're not talking about any sort of major housing boom, but then there isn't to the extent that like nothing has been developed. But we really wanted to highlight there in terms of what has been or what's in the pipeline. So it's not that Lewisboro isn't having any sort of development, but there is some development taking place, and that's the information we received directly from the town itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think it's the message. When I read that, I got one message in one place and a different message in another. So I think it's kind of just and trying to make sure I knew what the message was. And I think you just explained it, that there's been, there's been incremental or small amount of growth, but there is no, it's not undergoing rapid development by any means. And so thank you. I think that was just lack of clarity to me.
Yeah. If we can clean up the language there to make it clear, or not, and make it clear what's not clear, just that would be good.
Then there was a comment, this is dealing with, it says page 81, but really it's dealing with other wastewater plants in Lewisboro or run by the Lewisboro School District. One is at the Lewisboro Elementary School. So do we have, because we're gonna also, like a couple of these edits also go back to the inventory analysis, which we'll go back in and tweak. But do we have any information, or is this absolutely confirmed that these wastewater treatment plants are also run by the Lewisboro School District?
I know that the one at the Lewisboro Elementary School is run by Katona Lewisboro School District. I don't know that it's going to have anything to do with potential future sewer districts. So I can't quite remember the context of that.
Sam, do you
I
have
should
that to
have
pull
the
up?
document.
Yeah, because we have that ready to go.
Give me one second.
Was it just that it was speaking about what infrastructure currently exists and that the Lewisboro Elementary School was just left out?
Well, the comment was, I believe there are other wastewater plants in Lewisboro run. One second, I have to move you. In Lewisboro, run by the Katona Lewisboro School District. Especially of importance is the one at the Lewisboro Elementary School as it relates to potential future sewer districts serving the lake communities.
Right. So
That's what-
before we kind of put that information in there, we really need to feel confident, like that. How would it relate to potential future sewer districts, and you know what I mean? And like, how would this is the Lewisboro School District, like, because we don't want to just start throwing those kind of concepts or ideas out there unless for some reason we know fairly confidently that that's a potential possibility, or you know, it has capacity, or you know, so that's why we wanted to have that kind of discussion.
This is page 81.
Okay, so
And
it's
sorry, the pages, it's not the page in the corner, it's going to be the page out of the number in the full document. So if you're looking at it like on Adobe, it would be page 81 out of the 104.
Oh, I see. It
Yeah.
would be page 80.
but I don't, let's see, I'd have to get, but anyway, I don't have that up, but I think,
Infrastructure.
but what I would say is that I think when we looked at whether or not the Lewisboro Elementary School could be used for lake communities, it's really very undersized. So what we would have to do is, so let's see, so it's highly unlikely that it would be used. The current proposal that we're trying to get grants for would be to build a new one and not use that one. So I think it's fair to say that I don't see where it's in here.
I think
Larry, yeah,
I
Larry.
had called I had called it out just I feel like it's an omission, you know, the comment about future lake districts, sewer districts around the lake is just an aside. But it just says there's two public wastewater treatment plants in the town of Lewisboro. And maybe that's accurate, but I did want to note that there are other treatment plants in the town.
Right.
And
so
I don't
we
know if
do
the
have-
school,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I don't think that's the only wastewater plant serving a school in the town. I think there's others. But just for accuracy, I would consider the other school wastewater plants public, and that I think they should be included.
Yeah, so for example, Increase Miller, I know has one, and that one in the future, just nobody has sized it or looked at it and whether or not whether it could handle Lake Katona's flows, for example. So, but I think Larry's right about there are other.
John, we'll let you go
I want
next.
to just
Having-
make sure,
having
because
been on
we
the-
have one sentence, we have a sentence that says all other areas within the town do not have access to the town's public sewer systems and are serviced by individual septic systems, private development, community septic systems, or private wastewater treatment plants. So the public school districts would fall under the private wastewater treatment plants. But what we can do is say private wastewater, we could say private or school district run wastewater treatment plants. Because this is theoretically, if a new development comes in, they don't get to they don't get to petition the town to connect to their sewer. They would have to petition, let's just say there was capacity at like one of the wastewater treatment plants at like, you know, Lewisboro Elementary. They would have to petition the school district, right? And the town would have nothing to do with whether they could tap into that or not.
Mm-hmm. John, go ahead.
Yeah, having been on the What to Do with Lewisboro School Committee, I know that one is required by the DEC. And it's, and you're right, you would have to get the school district controls it, and so you would have to make some arrangement, and I think there's probably a fixed cost to doing that, so.
Okay. Charlene?
Yeah, I agree. I think it has to be stated that it's a separate entity and the chances of our joining in are not really high.
Okay. Jan?
Yeah, I liked Valerie's addition of,
Yeah.
the private wastewater treatment plants, including those that run by school districts. I think that's great.
Yep.
Okay. Good. So that solves that problem, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stop sharing so you can share your screen again, Sam.
Perfect.
Good. We're very thorough around here for anyone who hadn't noticed previously.
It's a good thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, so Sam, I'm going to turn this over to you about this additional help.
Yeah, so on this one, the quote was additional help is needed due to power outages that occur during storm events. And it was a question of clarity, right? It was unclear as what was meant by additional help. So for whoever did this comment, do you have like specific wording in mind that you would like to be incorporated? Like, is there certain help that you want called out or mentioned?
That was my comment. It said additional help in the text, and I just don't know what that means. So I just think the statement, how it's written, needs to be clarified.
Mhm. Is this page? This is page 86. The PDF pages. Ah, yes. Yeah, I agree that
Could you make that a little bigger, Katie?
absolutely.
Some of us have older eyes. I would think, do you mean things like the town might consider warming stations, but that's not really part of the objective.
No. Charlene, you have a thought?
There are criteria for undergrounding the wires. And maybe we can ask that a study be done by the NICEAG as to the possibility of them doing underground for new developments or whatever. Because anything that has to do with the town paying for it, it's an enormous cost. I've dealt with it in Dobbs Ferry, and to do it just on Main Street would be just like $10 million. So it's not really something that we can do. But there's criteria that is very specific as to when NICEAG should pay for it. So maybe a study.
Mm-hmm. John, go ahead.
I think, excuse me, anything like this, we should include some sentence about getting the state involved because they have the leverage we do not. And, I think I put that in on another section, but
Yeah.
I don't know that it made it into this document. I'm not sure.
Oh, this isn't the change. This is the one that was shared with us. This doesn't have changes yet.
Okay, but I think a general principle is anything while you're dealing with Optimum or you're dealing with NICEAG, the town has very little leverage, and but the state has a lot of leverage.
Mhm.
So I think that should be a general statement that we make in those sections.
So, Sam, did we answer your question? I mean, I think that sentence
Yeah.
maybe was just sort of a vague precursor to the next sentence.
Yes, yeah,
So-
absolutely.
If you can either delete it or clarify based on the conversation tonight, that would be great.
Yeah, I think kind of building it up more based off of what you guys said, like mentioning those criteria or a study. I think that will still give it the flow that it needs in that part. And then transition well into the burying of the lines, which actually transitions well into, I think, the next comment.
Okay.
Let me check. Yes, so there were comments mentioning the term undergrounding instead of burying. So the reason that we definitely want to talk about this one is it requires changing the objective, which says burying of lines, which has been seen by the public and everything like that. So it's really up to you guys if you want to change the wording from burying to undergrounding.
I think you can leave it as it is in the objective, but then in the description underneath, highlight that whether you're referring to burying or undergrounding, one is more of a technical term and one is more like a layperson term. But as long as you mention them both, I think that would be okay. What does the group think about that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're good with that. You don't have to change the objective because you're right. We don't want to mess with the things that the public has seen and approved.
Yeah. All right, cool. So the next one has to do with this shuttle bus. This is another one kind of like the sewer district that kind of has to be verified, because then if it is the case, then we have to make sure that we're incorporating it into the inventory and analysis if it's not already there. And we also want to make sure that we're mentioning it correctly. It's on page 98.
Is this the same as the Heart bus? Larry, do you want to talk about this? Or is this different?
Well, it's the Housatonic Regional Transportation Authority definitely continues to run a shuttle between Ridgefield and Katona, and it makes multiple stops in Lewisboro, including at a parking area on Spring Street, which my understanding is it's a town, the town leases the parking lot from the church, and then they used to charge, I don't know if they still do, but they would charge residents to park there, and then residents can hop on the bus and take it into Katona. As far as I know, that's the only public transit, and it's only for commuters, and I believe it's still running. But I don't know how else to verify it. The website still has the shuttle bus information.
Kirsten just put a link in the chat, which should do the trick. So that I think should be all that the NPV needs to verify. Charlene, go ahead.
I know there is, and I don't know who runs it. I thought it was Beeline runs a shuttle because it stops at the Meadows to the Katona station.
That's the Heart. It's Heart. It's that's the one in the same
Same
shuttle
thing.
bus.
Okay.
Okay, so
And that's
Heart,
one of the stops.
Heart and the Housatonic shuttle, those are the same things?
Yes.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that is in the inventory and analysis, but it's just not mentioned here. So if we could add that, that would be great.
And I just wanted to add that it only, as I remember, it only runs maybe at 2 different runs in the morning and 2 at night. So it's a fairly targeted commuter train connection, not not what we generally think of as a bus, a bus line or.
You're right. Yeah.
It's very much so a shuttle rather than like you would go there and go take it to get your groceries. Like you're taking it if you're a commuter.
Right.
Yes, and it basically starts in Richfield and goes to the train station, comes twice in the morning and twice at night. So it's not every half hour the bus will come by or anything. It's
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's just make sure that is mentioned and then also verify it. I think it is in the inventory analysis, but we'll just double check.
Perfect. Now this one I will mention just so that everyone's kind of on the same page, because I know Katie, I'm pretty sure you talked to Valerie about this a little bit, so we kind of have a game plan already. But with goals 15 and 17 and their related objectives, there was an overall feeling of like repetitiveness in terms of where we were talking about implementing the goals and objectives and like location identity. So coming up with a table that we'll put under one of the specific objectives and then basically referring to that table in any of the other objectives, like a cross-referencing kind of thing. That way there's one table that has all the locations with all of the recommendations related to pedestrians, safe streets, anything having to do with roads. Is that everyone kind of okay with that? Are we comfortable with dividing it by hamlets?
Nodding heads, yes?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that'll help a lot. Just having everything in one nice table that then can be pulled out and used elsewhere would be really helpful. So thank you. I think that was Larry's suggestion. Thank you, Larry. That was a good one.
Sounds good. The next thing was there were comments about sidewalks and whether or not we want to incorporate language having to do with who's responsible for sidewalks. So whoever the comments from said, one general note on sidewalks, Lewisboro currently doesn't have any code outlining who is responsible for repairing and maintaining and clearing snow from sidewalks. Is that something worth mentioning anywhere in the document along the lines of partnering with local businesses or securing funding for sidewalks upkeep and maintenance, or working into the recommendations for additional out of scope future code changes?
I think we did address this during our last zoning subcommittee meeting. But in terms of integrating it into the comprehensive plan itself, Valerie, did you guys have any thoughts about that?
So my thought was that we're happy to bring or happy to raise this as something that the town should consider, right? Because ultimately, I know the town board is looking to decide if they want to move forward with some of the, I guess, the other additional zoning changes. And if they choose to put this on like, you know, as like phase 2, then at least it's still there in the comprehensive plan. So we can do that.
Yeah, it's a really good point from Charlene. Charlene brought it up, and then I know the town planning board attorney really echoed her concerns and highlighted that during the last zoning subcommittee meeting. But Charlene, go ahead.
I don't have any particular idea of how it should go, but it should go somewhere, and it should be raised that that is an issue that everybody has to look at before any regulations or zoning codes are put in. Because if you have the town doing it, obviously the whole town will pay for it. Or you can have districting, or you can have, I mean, there's various methods of doing it. So as long as we bring it up and say that there are various methods of doing it, we should look at it, I'm fine.
Great. Okay. I think we can move on.
Perfect. Another comment was regarding an executive summary. So someone said to add in an executive summary, so a summary table with just the goals. If not in the executive summary, then at the beginning of the goals section, before providing the further breakdown. So my only concern with doing this was that we already have the table that has the goals and objectives by themselves, and then we repeat that again in the implementation matrix. So I don't know if it would be coming up too many times in the document where someone would like flip through and be like, wait, didn't I just see this? And didn't I just see this again? So I don't know if you want it in like a table form again, or what your guys' opinion kind of is on that.
Well, first, NPB, what are your thoughts about the executive summary? Are you guys, you feel comfortable about putting that together?
So we can put together an executive summary. But the only problem is like I think the first chapter is more or less like an executive summary, right? Because if we put it together an executive summary, we're really, I mean, you're not, I mean, we're really just going to be identifying the goals and object, right? Because you're not going to want to then, are we doing an executive summary for each chapter, right? Because I mean, I think that's the only thing that we have to figure out, because almost each chapter to some extent at the very beginning is almost an executive summary of the inventory and analysis, right? So an executive summary of the comprehensive plan would be the goals and objectives. So, I mean, we're happy to put an executive summary together. I just think we have to kind of decide how detailed that executive summary is really going to be.
I know Jan, this was Jan's original comment, but then I jumped in on it because it's so important. I mean, I come at all my writing from this perspective, like, who's going to actually sit down and read 100-page document? Very few people. Who will read the 4-page executive summary? Way, way, way more people. So I don't think we need to be worried about being repetitive, because the assumption is most people are just going to be looking at the executive summary. So if the executive summary is, this document has the following stuff in it, here's the table that's just the goals, here's the vision statement, and like, this is what this section is about, this is what this section is about, like very high level, just so somebody can sort of grab those 4 pages, touch them, read them, think about them, and say, do I even want to jump into the broader document? Charlene, I'm gonna let you go, and then Jan.
I agree that the executive, nobody reads anything, and we can accept that. However, I think it would be very important as to what we put into the executive summary, because as Valerie said, there is goals and objectives, but now we're going to have to even sort of get it together in something that will make sense, will also guide people. And my interest would be is that an executive summary would really focus on the need to look at and make sure that the goals and objectives are being looked at and carried forward, the implementation of it. So, that's mine, but I don't know what yours is, Katie. I don't know what Jan's is. And I think that would be very important, because it is I wouldn't say a propaganda statement, but it is something that will just clarify those issues that should be looked at, or we think that should be looked at.
Like technically everything should be looked at, right? That's the whole point of a
Right,
comprehensive plan. So it would be all the goals and objectives. So I think, can we just pull up the plan for a second? Because I think this is where maybe it's helpful if we look at the first few
Jan, do you want to
pages.
go ahead while they're doing that?
Sure. So what I'm thinking, and Valerie, almost, I'll be interested to see what you're going to put together to talk to the town board about. But what I'm almost thinking about is, what if you had to tell somebody in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 5 slides, what is this comprehensive plan about? That's what I'm really looking for, almost to have as a statement in there that and if you had slides and you could just extract these slides and take them and say, okay, this is what our comprehensive plan is about. Because you start, you go back there, you just start with the history, and like, so I'm all excited about reading this, I've looked at this, and I start into a history. I think if you sort of say, it's the old, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, then tell them what you told them. So tell me what you're going to tell me. You're going to say, there were, and you don't even have to say all of the objectives. The objectives kind of are fit into several categories. Let's talk about that. So, and you do talk here so about the pieces, but I think
we have like this, right? So we have this whole thing, like this plan structure. I mean, maybe is that what you're looking for? Is like maybe pulling that in
scroll up a little bit on page,
Yeah,
focus on
on
page.
page bottom, right. So we have,
Yeah, you could use that as the outline for the executive summary, but you know, you kind of want to flesh each section out a little
right,
bit.
so I think
I
that's
think-
where, I mean, not, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I think that's where I'm concerned if we do an executive summary is really just, so your land use and zoning, I can put the goals under the land use and zoning, right? But not the objectives. But it's not going to provide information as to how we got to these, right? Because a lot of that stuff is
Mhm.
kind of like you need more details, which is part of the reason why, like if a comprehensive plan was very, if you could just highlight it in very basic bullet points, it's because it's not, comprehensive plan is different. It's not like a technical document, right? Where you have the executive summaries where if somebody's really just interested in what's your conclusions, this is, these are the conclusions, where we can provide the goals, you know what I mean? Like we can have land use and zoning and then just say these are the goals for the land use and zoning, right? And then if people are more interested in the objectives, we can even just say there are so many objectives associated with each one of these goals and then just kind of leave it at that. And then if they're interested in the objectives, they can go to the individual chapters. The other thing we could do is just put the goals and objectives and the vision statement right at the very beginning. But I
I
know
think-
this committee's been very concerned about explanations and explaining, right? And so people won't get that from just an executive summary.
Sure.
Right, but I think if you had the vision and so if you go back up where you talk about the 1985 plan. Which is right there. Oh, okay. So this is what, this is a summary of what the 1985 plan said. And it's a page and a half or 2 pages of kind of almost bullet points. Now, I'm not saying you have to do something quite like that, but kind of, hey, we're talking about, basically the things we came up with: continue a residential community, build the 6 hamlet centers. It still retains a very proud history of the traditions of the community and wants to continue open space and natural access. I'm looking for something that's kind of, and as I said, maybe when you go and start telling the town board what the comprehensive plan says, it will almost be that. And that's where I'm kind of,
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of what you just described is your guys' visions. Like that is your vision. Your vision statement almost acts as an executive summary in your document. So Valerie kind of touched on it of putting that in earlier, but I think that like that could spark people's interest, and then you can go into, so how did we get here? Well, this is where our history was. And then, you know what? If people get lost at the history, like you said, they're going to get lost at the history,
Mhm.
but they will still have read the vision statement, which encapsulates all of those goals, right? The goals and objectives had to ultimately fall into that vision statement.
Right,
Mhm.
and this
But,
right here, what you
Papa,
have,
time out. I'm John. I know you've been waiting, and Charlene. Go ahead, John. Unmute.
I think
There we go.
Charlene had her hand up first, so go ahead.
No, go ahead, John, please.
I think that what we would really like to see, when you open the document and you go into the history, most people don't care in reality. I think what we need is a very high level opening that states the vision and in very general terms, not details on the goals and objectives, but probably something that says, if you want to skip over the history, here's where they are. So you tell them where the pages are.
that's
And,
the table of contents.
Charlene, go ahead.
People want to know that it is a document that's not going to go in the drawer. It's a document that is a living document, and I think it was said, but how that will be implemented, or at least what the attempts will be to implement it. And I think that we have like zoning that we're going to do now and what we're going to do in the future with these goals and objectives, which are great. And we don't have to specify, but give people an idea that this is a document that we really should look at because this is what's going to guide us and this is how we're going to implement it, and that the town board is looking to this document, not to put in the drawer, but to go forward.
Yes, the why. The why should you, here's the vision. Why should you continue reading this document? Why is this document important?
Exactly.
So those two things in a nutshell, I think we're all in agreement that we don't have to do all the goals and objectives, but the vision statement is important. And then the dressing around why. And you know what? I'm happy to put together like a bullet point, some suggestions on how to order it and what the content should be, pulling from the full document. And then you guys can edit it and use your expertise to make it what you think it should be. But we definitely need to have something up front to kind of pull people into the document before the table of contents.
So you want something before the table of contents. So that's different. So we're not talking about an executive summary. We're talking about a different section then.
We can
No, it's an executive summary, but it would go before the table of contents. Or, I mean, I don't know. We can look at what best practices are here, but
Well, usually it's table of contents and executive summary, its own chapter, right? Which basically summarizes the document. But it sounds like you're looking for something different than an executive summary.
maybe it's because we're thinking about it more from like a business writing perspective.
Yeah.
I
Then,
think what Katie's trying to do is get something to pull people into the document.
yeah.
And it doesn't have to be long or detailed, but it has to give them the reason why they should bother to keep reading. And I think that's all it needs to be.
You're
Exactly.
looking for like that when you go to a library and you pick up a book and you open the inside cover and there's that thing that you read, the little summary that you're like, oh, okay, I actually want to read this book, or never mind, I don't want to read it. That's what you're looking for in a sense,
Yeah.
right?
Well, you're looking for a New York Times editorial on it.
Gotcha.
I think it'll be helpful for us because
I can
to have Katie specifically identify what it is that she wants in there, because I think because throughout this process, and I'll just be throughout this process, this committee has wanted more detail than less detail, right? More explanation than less explanation. So we're going to create something that we're going to try to like basically boil down a 200-page document plus another, you know what I mean, into like a couple paragraphs. So I think it probably would be good to have like Katie, why don't you kind of give us like your thoughts on it, and then we can develop that.
Katie, I'll work with you on it if you want.
Yeah, I hear what everybody's asking for. I feel pretty confident we can get an outline for you of that. That will really be helpful. Okay. Thank you for bearing with us on that. We want all the detail and we want it to be so thorough, the document itself, but we do want to give something that is high level and accessible for people that don't have time, and want to know the reason why they should devote more time.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let me see. And then I think in terms of other comments, this was one comment, one substantive comment on a map that had to do with the Vista reservoirs. So it said access is prohibited, and I think we had it highlighted as a lake community. So, I mean, we can take it off as a lake community. I think it was more that we identified it as such just because of people living on the reservoir or near the reservoir, still having that a similar, for lack of a better term, like vibe, if that makes sense.
I think it does. It makes sense to that, but they aren't really, so typically the communities that live around lakes and have access to lakes have a community that's really built around that, and they get together to do, I don't know, shore cleanups and weed pulls and, so around the reservoirs, they share, it's true, share the view of the reservoir, but there's no real, those three have really no access. It's, if it happens, it's not, it's subterfuge, not openly accessing them. So I hear what you're saying. I mean, and it's wonderful that those people can look at the lake, at the reservoirs, but they don't have that same. I wouldn't call it a lake community. If if you're talking in terms of, we've got to make sure that the septics of people that live up, uphill of drinking water are in good condition. Well, okay, then it's a lake, then it's a lake adjacent community maybe, or something, but it's not socially really a lake community, if you understand the difference. It's
Yeah, that
okay.
makes sense.
John?
Well, the reality is those are owned by Norwalk, I think, for the most part. And lake communities have some power. You guys set rules. They set rules. They approve things. None of that's true of the reservoirs. So lake community, I think, muddies what the other lake communities have. And so I think that's the wrong term.
Okay. So we can take those ones off from the map. But they'll still obviously be designated more as neighborhoods.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if there's something that I forget now, if there's an environmentally sensitive set of rules, it might apply to those, but it's not, they don't, yeah, the social versus uphillness is the difference, I think.
Okay. Yeah, we can check to see where we mention the lake communities in terms of like the objectives and those kind of things, to make sure if we're relating to them, if we're mentioning the lake communities and in terms of like environmental constraints or protections and stuff like that, then maybe we also make sure that we've also mentioned the reservoirs.
That sounds good.
And then two last comments. Overall, adding links to the document. I honestly put this here as a reminder for us to make sure that we absolutely do that, because it's a substantial comment. We want to make sure that everything is linking to. You seem to want like external links, such as like if you have any documents online that we refer to, we can have it linked to that. And then also have it link internally in the document to pages and stuff like that. So when you click on the table of contents, it goes to that page of the document. And then last thing,
one thing, Sam, with the external linking. So if the town of Lewisboro changes their website or changes like the locations of those documents, you're going to lose that link.
Yeah,
So
sure.
that's the one thing, that's the one downside to something like that, but we can do that.
Yeah, I think most of those comments were around external resources, like more like state and county resources, and definitely people change links all the time regardless of who they are. But if you use a link and then also have it footnoted so that the title of the document is in the footnote, people will be able to figure it out.
Yeah, we can make sure to cross-reference kind of. And then the last thing was a comment relating to the increased website accessibility. So there should be a mention here of making the website accessible, compatible with screen reading, etc., and continuing to provide the Google Translate button. So Just wanted to make sure you guys were comfortable with that as an overall comment of including that under the objective.
I put that in there because I know we've been so careful throughout this whole process about thinking about the way people interact with our information and acknowledging that people reading stuff on our website or in our email blasts might be using a screen reader. And so if we're just posting a PDF, then they won't be able to read it. So I just thought we were so careful about that throughout the process that it would make sense to add something about that in the document itself. I don't know what the right, I Googled quickly WCAG and ADA compliant website. You guys can figure out if that's the best practice or not.
Okay.
But we did make sure that the town website had the Google Translate button at the beginning of this process. I know that's something that a lot of other communities, their town websites use as well, and that you guys have mentioned is sort of best practice. So if that is best practice, that we should leave that there, then mention that as well. If it matches with what you're seeing in terms of, industry standards. Jan?
Yeah, so I think we're at the end of this, but before we leave it, I also wanted to just see what people thought about, and I know it's really redundant, but just maybe at the beginning of each of the sections, putting a little sidebar or a little sub box that has just what the objective is at each thing. So it's not part of the main text, but it's just, like a little sidebar that says, this is what this section is about. It doesn't literally say that. It just says, objective number 3, and has that in there. As I tend to be caught by headlines and sidebars and little boxes. I find it really helpful getting through. And again, I don't know whether that's something that's kind of standard in a comp plan, but I find it very helpful. So I wanted to, in addition to the executive summary, we kind of talked about it's very repetitive, and I get that it is, but it might also be just sort of an anchor. So when you're flipping through and say, I know somewhere in here there's something about infrastructure, and it's in here. I just wanted to throw that out again as an idea.
You want the objectives on every page? I'm not sure if I follow.
Oh,
think
at the start of every section, maybe.
Yeah, let me add a visual. I think what Jan is asking for is that, like, when you start a section, like here's E2 housing, if there were a call out box, like right here, somewhere on the first page, that then says goal 3, there's only goal 3 there, but like economic development, there's goal 4, then there's goal 5, like something that sort of gives you a little visual mile marker that's like under E3, there's goals 4, 5, 6, and 7. Is that what you mean, Jan? Like a little mile.
Yep. And it can be just a little, it doesn't have to be full column across, just a little sidebar that sort of says, here's the goals. And then, because then I have in my head what I'm looking at as I come through each one. And
well, it wouldn't be a sidebar. It would have to be just listed underneath, I think.
Yeah, but I was saying sort of a call out box. So it isn't, it could be it could be a half column. I mean, or a halfway across, and you could keep going, or it could be all the way across if you want. It's okay. So these are really well organized. They have different colors. They bring it out. This is something that I find I use, but I turn it over to you guys to say whether or not you think that would be of assistance going through this.
I think it would definitely be of assistance, but I question whether, like, I'm looking at the document format that NPV has used. I think it might be challenging for them to actually implement that without like completely blowing up their page formatting.
What if it was, I don't know what type of, this is getting technical about what kind of document format you're using, but could it be set up as like a section or a subsection header or footer where it would like run along the top or the bottom of the page? I'm
Or
just
like
trying to think if
that
there's
might be a lot to
another
have
way to
like
do it.
4 goals on the top of the page. But okay, so even if you just put them right under it and said, here's the 4, as a reminder, this includes these 4 goals. We're gonna, and then, then just start in on it. I know it's repetitive, but
We can get rid of the summaries for the chapters and just go right into the goals if you want to just do that.
No.
Okay.
No, I think what she's,
Or back in
so
for that.
what you're basically saying is like if I think of it in like elementary school textbooks, like you open the chapter and then there's like the little bubble and it says like what's in this chapter, like key terms or something like that. That's
Mhm.
like what you're looking for basically.
Yeah,
Right.
it would be a call out box, but it has to be an object in the Word document that is then set against the text so that the text wraps around it. And
Right.
know
So I think you're going to find, because those goals are long, right? So you're going to find that that's going to take up like the rest of that page, right? For some of the goals.
Or
That's
do you
the,
just want it to say like what's in this chapter and then it says like goal 1, 2, 3. Like how, like, do you want it to say goal 1 blah 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 or just goal 1 comma goal 2?
I think it should, I mean, if you just say it has goals 4, 5, and 6 in this chapter, I don't think that's very informative. But I think if it says, and I apologize that I don't have it in front of me, but if it has, a small block that says goal 4, goal 5, goal 6, and what they are, I hear that you're saying it's going to take up a lot of space, but what I should probably do is do a cut and paste and see what it looks like to me and see if it helps.
Yeah, why don't we take it offline and experiment with a little bit and
because
see what
I'm just so visually
that would help a lot. If we could get it to be bite size. And John, go ahead. You're on mute.
The goals that are in these sections are all in sort of a category. So if you could just list maybe the high level category instead of listing all the goals, I think you might get to the same place that you want to in terms of the call out without getting into, too much detail and repetitiveness.
Let's take it offline and mess around with it a little bit. You NPV stand by. We'll get back to you on that and the executive summary and give you some guidance on what we're looking for.
so in terms of timing, we're supposed to deliver something. We're supposed to deliver a document to the town board by January 3rd. We have next week, I'm only in for 2 days and Sam, you're in for what? 2.5 days? Yeah. So we need to, anything that needs to be decided will need to be decided. I mean, if we want to meet the January 3rd deadline, we'll need things decided by Wednesday.
Okay.
And then
I think that's fine. And also if these little extra bubbles and the executive summary don't make it in until after the public workshop, I think that's okay too. I mean, ideally it would be before the executive summary, at least would be before the public workshop, but.
right, I think the final, right, so the final thing, let's just figure out what it is that you're gonna plan, because then we have to figure out how much work that's gonna, like, so I think it should be fine. It's just that I just want to make sure everyone's in agreement, because once we do this, and then if people say we don't like this and we have to turn it all back, I think that's because we're getting down to the wire on our budget just in general. And I think, you know, because we've done a lot more extra meetings than we originally proposed. And so like we've been, you know, we've been working all the zoning committee, like all those extra, a lot of our meetings, you know, as part of this. So I'm just getting a little nervous that if we have to do a lot of like extra formatting, we might just have to talk. So I just want to make sure that once a decision's made, like that's the final decision on that.
Okay. All right. We'll work with you on that. We'll take that
Okay.
offline and we can touch base on that by Wednesday, right? I think that's fine. That's
Yeah.
fair.
Now the one thing though, I'm a little concerned. So let's just try it because I'm just want to make sure that we get everything because we still have to do all the hyperlinks and we have to do all the other edits. So I just want to make sure that we have plenty of time. So like if Wednesday, what I mean by Wednesday is like really like if you can make your decisions tomorrow and then like Wednesday like morning because
Mhm.
we really need most of this week to do all the work in order to be able to finalize things next week, put all the hyperlinks in, and then get it to the town board.
Okay. Jan and I can work on that tomorrow. Well, I'll work on the executive summary and Jan can mess around with the call out box bubbles idea. Is that okay, Jan? Okay. All right, we're on it. Don't worry. No problem.
We got the planning board tomorrow, but tomorrow night, but I should be able to do it. I mean, it either will look okay or it won't, and
Mhm.
I'll get with you, Katie, and let you know.
Okay. That sounds good. Okay. Thank you for allowing us to push your boundaries on this a little bit.
No, I mean, I think it's fine. I just want to make sure we're not creating too busy of a document or too repetitive a document that people who actually read it feel like, why am I keep seeing this? You know what I mean? Because,
Yeah.
you know, I think we just want to make sure that we really, and that we're not giving people information before they understand the context of the information, right? So,
Mhm.
because we
Yeah.
already lay out the
You're
goals
talking
and
about those
objectives at
10
the
people
beginning.
who read it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Well, it's a fine line, but don't worry. I think we'll be able to figure out something great. Okay, does that cover all your questions on our comments?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Did anybody, I know we're running. We're gonna finish on time. We are. And so I'm just gonna say any lingering questions, if they are truly burning, they need to be asked. Okay. So let's move into the next part of the agenda. So, I think we can skip to the final public workshop. So, our understanding is that Valerie, you and your team are going to prepare a presentation.
Right.
And that'll be, how long were you thinking for presentation versus Q&A? For the
So
work?
I think most people, like, I think the presentation will probably be like no more than like maybe 20 minutes or so. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be a little bit high level. The assumption will be that people would have taken a look at the comprehensive plan ahead of time, if they really want to dive into the details, right? But if not, and they're just looking like, what is it that you're proposing? We're going to give a high level of like basically the goals of the comprehensive plan, maybe highlight a couple of the, basically a couple of the goals, but not go into every one of the goals. And then let them know where they can get the resources and then just kind of talk a little bit about the zoning that's being proposed.
Mhm.
And then my thought was, we can do some Q&A at that point, but I would also like to schedule like maybe a couple weeks later, like what I'm going to call like an open house. So whether that's in person or we can have people sign up if they want to, but especially focused on the zoning, so that if people have very specific questions about like the zoning, that they can actually come and ask those questions. So like maybe set up like, like an afternoon or something like that and come in to town hall whenever, if you have any questions, and then I'd be happy to sit down with them. And if they have, particular question about their property or particular zoning, and I think that sometimes is a little bit helpful, especially when you're dealing with zoning updates.
I could see that being really successful over Zoom too.
Right, and we can do it over Zoom as well. You know what I mean? We've done open houses on other types of projects where people just like we can do like you can just automatically sign up for like a session. You know what I mean? And people can, and you know what? And if people aren't interested, that's totally fine. But this is the way of if somebody's concerned about like a particular zoning or what's happening in like, even like some of the hamlet organizations, if somebody has a question, they can get a little bit more one-on-one time than feeling like if they have to ask it at a particular public meeting.
That's within budget for you?
So because we're doing this particular workshop, because we've condensed it a little bit in terms of we're not developing a whole bunch of different posters ahead of time. And it's really just we're developing the PowerPoint presentation. I can set some time aside to kind of do those like open house hours.
Okay. Let me just think about that in terms of it would be nice when we get the flyers out saying the public workshop is January 29th. It would be nice to also have on the flyer like sign up for
Yeah, we can.
open house
We can even just decide to do like a Zoom, you know what I mean? If you want to just do that, and we can have like register here, and then people can register for specific dates and times, and we can pick like a couple different days and then have people like sign up, and then we'll log on if somebody signs up for a particular day and time.
Okay, let me give some thought to that in terms of the getting the word out there about that, what the best outreach method would be.
I like this idea also as a way maybe to get some of the boards to know a little bit more about zoning changes. I think if you kind of said because I think the changes that we're making are not huge, but they're important. And so I'm kind of thinking this might be a way if somebody said, okay, what did you really do about, explain how the senior overlay will work before the first application comes in. It might be something that I would even encourage, our planning board to come talk about, or the building inspector, something. I mean, so I sort of like that idea, because getting a new, assuming it goes, getting people to know that there's a lot of new zoning code, and then getting it through and getting everybody to get acquainted with it. I think that would be an interesting open house to have.
Right, and we can also, if you want, since you already have like an email set up, you could even have for like, let's just say, and we'd have to work out the schedule, right? But we could even have for like 2 weeks, have a question about the new zoning, email us, you know what I mean? And then the email can come in and we can even send them an email back, right? So it doesn't even have, so we can maybe do it like 2 different ways. And this way I find like sometimes having these kind of open house and like ask us any questions, it kind of prevents the situation where you have a lot of people showing up to a meeting really worried that something, major is changing, and then all of a sudden it like snowballs, or so this way, if we kind of have it as like a setup like this, so that we're providing a presentation and we have questions and answers, but if you want to really dive into like more details, these are the next steps, and these are how you can get more, very specific information to your questions.
Great. Okay, fantastic. Yeah, let's think about how to message that so everybody is clear and knows what they can do. I can work on that.
Yeah.
Do you need anything other than maybe one volunteer from the steering committee to be in person at the townhouse on January 29th. In addition to the town employees who will be helping make sure that, it's streamed to YouTube and on Zoom and facilitating who raised their hand on Zoom and that kind of thing. Do you need anything else from the steering committee to implement the workshop and the office hours?
No, I don't. We just
Okay.
have to figure out, dates and times, and then that's about it.
Okay. And we're doing the outreach. So we're doing all the like public advertising and stuff. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the format of the January 29th workshop or the office hours? I think that's really great. Okay. Does anybody want to volunteer now to be in person at the townhouse on January 29th from steering committee? If not, we can do it offline. All right, well, I'll do that offline. Okay. I think then we're good. We don't have, yeah, we don't have any minutes to approve. Okay, good. So we do have a few minutes if anybody has any thoughts or questions they want to share. I just am feeling such pressure to end this meeting on time since our zoning subcommittee meetings have been 3-hour affairs for the past 3 months. Yeah, so
Katie, the comments we made the other night, they're gonna, they were kind of small. They're gonna make it in.
on zoning?
No, no, on the comprehensive plan.
Yes, anything you emailed me and Kirsten, I aggregated into as few documents as I could and sent to NPV. And the stuff they brought up tonight was the only stuff that they had questions about. So anything else you can assume will be integrated into the document.
All right, good.
Yes. And as you know, we will, Valerie and team, we will be double checking that. So, Jan?
Just, I think one of the other things that was on the agenda was talking about prepping for the town board, and I didn't know whether there was anything you needed from us as you get ready for that. I just wanted to, I don't have anything to offer, but just ready to answer questions.
Right. No, that one's going to be that presentation is going to be even more streamlined, right? Because it's a, town board meeting, and it's really to get their comments, their questions, their feedback, right? As opposed to me explaining to them what the comprehensive plan is. So that's going to be like much more high level. And, and the assumption is that at that point, they would have already looked at they clearly been looking at the zoning. I'm sure that they will have at that point really looked at the comprehensive plan. And if there's any questions or whatever, I'll answer, them at that point. But it's just going to be more of like a quick presentation, and it's really more of like a work session in terms of any questions that they have on anything.
I did warn them. I emailed the town board and said, we're going to be getting you the final draft of the comprehensive plan by January 3rd at the latest. It will have integrated all the comments from this group here. We don't expect you're going to read the whole thing between the 3rd and the 8th, but we do expect that you're going to skim through it and you're going to give some thought to preliminary questions you have. Oh, I thought this issue was going to be in it, but it's not. I thought that this was this, like any concerns that pop up for them, they're each going to have their own lens that they look at it through. But I think we've done such a good job of incorporating their feedback throughout that I would be surprised if anything very drastic jumps out. But that's a good opportunity. If it does, it does, and we can address it.
A question. With that meeting, would that be the first time that the draft comprehensive plan would be available to the public? This is more a question, I think, for Katie and Kirsten, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I think right there.
When Valerie gives it to them for their meeting, it will be public record. So at that point, I think we should also post it to our website, marked as draft.
Okay.
Yeah, that way it's available. So it might change a little bit between then and the actual meeting, but we can just post a new version if that happens. Yeah, we want it up as soon as possible. Charlene?
When are we going to address the zoning amendments?
So the town board is gonna talk with Valerie about those on the 8th as well. And then those will get posted and those will be discussed during the public workshop on the 29th as well. So they all kind of have to get mixed in together. And then after the workshop on the 29th, I think if, as far as the zoning subcommittee goes, we're kind of in a, we're done for now, unless Valerie and her team need us to come back in for more discussion and more tweaking after the public workshop.
Right, now the one thing is if for some reason the town board decides to move forward with some of the other or the other topics or zoning amendments that were identified by the committee, then we'll have to work or figure out how we want to deal with that, because there'll probably still be drafts by the time the public workshop takes place. I feel comfortable enough that we still have the public workshop, because by that time we'll have a better sense of like what it is that we're proposing, and none of them are like, I think the larger of the zoning changes would have occurred in terms of like, you know, the accessory, you know, just dealing with like the housing and commercial uses. I think the biggest one would be, you know, because a lot of the other ones are like really dealing with more bringing codes up to certain standards or incorporating like alternative energies. So I think that's I think I feel comfortable that we would be able to have the public workshop, which is why I was also saying we can have the office hours afterwards, because then if the other drafts are then released shortly after that, or even very close to the public workshop, there's time for the public to review that and then also ask any questions on the new stuff.
And then there's public hearings.
Then there's public hearings.
This is all even before we get to public hearing.
That's correct.
Jan?
So that was going to be my question. Do we know when the public hearings, we're thinking about them, or is it very dependent upon what feedback we get from town board and the public at the workshop?
So I think to answer your question, I think a lot of it will depend upon whether the first of all, if there's a lot of feedback in terms of like the crowd, the public workshop really wants to see a lot of edits, or there's something of major concern, then we'll like, you know, relook and revise and work with the town board before bringing it to the public hearing. I'm not saying that there won't be feedback from the public, but I feel fairly confident that the document that was developed was really developed with public input, right? We have a lot of information in that document that really shows where the public input came into play and why we're developing the goals and objectives and implementation. So I think to a larger extent, if this sort of unfolds like a typical comprehensive plan process, you'll have the public workshop. Then shortly after, once all the drafts have been reviewed, then at that point, the town board will start looking towards scheduling the public hearings on the comp plan and the draft zoning. We'll start the state environmental quality review process, and then we'll bring this to public hearing. And then the board will sometimes keep the public hearing open for maybe a couple meetings, and then at that point, look towards adoption.
And we will try to help them along the way to make sure that it happens quickly and we keep the momentum going. But we will be, it'll be up to them in terms of all the other stuff on their agenda and things like that.
Exactly.
Well, and the seeker process takes a while too.
Right.
In this particular situation, it won't take that long, because it's just really going to be a part 1, part 2, and a part 3. And we'll get started on a lot of that stuff behind, you know, while we're getting ready towards the public hearing piece. The seeker itself really looks at a lot of its policy that you have in your comprehensive plan, and even the zoning. A lot of the zoning tweaks aren't really changing your overall densities or intensity of uses on a particular zoning district. And that's usually what triggers a more intensive type of seeker analysis.
Okay.
Good. So, did we already declare, did the town declare lead agency, or is that not required as part of this? Wonderful. Thank you.
So they'll ultimately, they haven't done it yet. They'll ultimately have to declare lead agency. You'll have your 30 days. The comprehensive plan and the draft zoning would go out to the county for referral, but all of that can happen within like a couple months, right? You can have that ready to go. And that's why I was saying once the town board sort of indicates like they're ready to go to the next steps, we'll lay out exactly what that process is. And while they're working towards scheduling certain hearings, we'll be starting the seeker process in terms of document development and the like.
Right. Okay, we're at time. If we missed anything or you have any follow-up thoughts, just send an email. But thank you so much, everybody, for all the time and effort that's gone into this. Thank you, NPV, for all your work and your continued work. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second? John, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks so much, everybody. Happy